Chair. Call David Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Labor will support this bill, which was first introduced in 2007 by Rick Barker, who's now retired as a Member of Parliament, and I think as previous speakers have noted, it is in many ways shocking that it's taken so long to get this legislation moving properly through the House. The bill was first introduced in 2004 and was solid legislation to make sure that the harms of problem gambling were reduced. And of course, immediately a new bill is introduced. It is tested in the real world, and it is shown that there are corners that need to be sanded, there are holes that need to be plugged, and so on. I don't want to stretch the metaphor too far, Mr. Chair, you'll understand, but a bill needs to be road tested. And then this bill has come back to the House to make some improvements upon the original bill, to make sure that it is roadworthy and to make sure that it is fit for purpose and to make sure that it achieves the goals it set out to achieve. And so it's actually, for those watching at home who've been following the debate, it's not a huge bill, but nor is it just a couple of pages. We've got about 48 sides of text as parliamentarians that we can look through to make sure, as best we can judge, it is going to achieve the purposes of the original bill and to make sure that it doesn't need to come back yet again. It may well do as the situation changes. So here we find ourselves arguing the case for a bill across the House where it enjoys wide support because it is trying to achieve the purposes of the bill. Now, Mr. Chair, I want to refer to some things in part two which relate to the increase in casino gambling. Specifically, at the start of part two, we have clause 8, subclause 1 and 2, which are talking about how the bill decides that it is going to ensure that problem gambling doesn't increase. And my colleague Chris Hipkins indicated earlier that the effect of this is that it is to put casino gambling, the judgments about casino gambling, in the hands of the Gambling Commission, an independent body that will ensure over time that problem gambling is reduced and that society as a whole doesn't bear more costs than it should when gambling takes place. Basically, it's seeking to make sure that the bill operates as it's intended, that there are not unforeseen costs, unintended consequences, and a broader societal cost. And it would be deeply ironic if we were passing this bill through the House that reduces problem gambling, if at the same time legislation were being put through that would increase the harm from problem gambling. And yet that is what we find has been the case through this Parliament with another bill that is set down to increase the number of pokie machines at Sky City. I don't want to talk specifically about that. The Chair has made it clear that that won't be tolerated, but I want to go through some of the clauses and acknowledge that they are put there so that there are more powers in the hands of the Gambling Commissioner to reduce problem gambling. So we see the nature and description around renewal of operator's licence in clause 22A on page 16, the application for a licence on the following page, on page 17, how words are changed to make sure that everything is covered off. Likewise, we see a clause slipping in there that gives more powers to the Secretary to categorise gambling so that that we can be sure that those things that are harmful, if the nature of gambling changes, if there are technical changes in the nature of gambling machines and so on that might otherwise not be captured by the machine, as I read this, and the Minister and the Chair can correct me if I'm wrong, as I read this, this gives the Secretary powers to classify what is and what isn't likely to be captured as problem gambling under the different types of gambling described in this bill. And so it would be indeed deeply ironic if at the same time we were proposing to pass a bill through the Parliament that facilitated 8,000 more people to be affected by problem gambling, that put 230 more pokie machines in the hands of a casino, whilst we're extending the powers in the other direction in a bill, Mr Chair. But Mr Chair, this is what this bill does. This bill does restrict problem gambling. It does close those loopholes where we might hope that it would, and we see that elsewhere the government is looking perhaps at doing completely the opposite, and that does pain us on this side of the House, where we do believe that it's important to curb the harms to society as laid out in this bill, where it is important to restrict the category of who can hold a gambling licence, and to have even retrospective clauses we find in here that give increased powers to restrict the use, to restrict gambling licences for those who may not currently be in breach, but who may have historically been in breach. So there are all of these specifics in this bill that we commend and we support. And it would be fairly meaningless were we to be introducing measures to restrict problem gambling, only to find that elsewhere, indeed, it was being increased. So where there are, I've already mentioned the licences that are exercised in respect of a past breach. It provides also, as I've mentioned in passing, the express obligation to incur only actual, reasonable and necessary costs of gambling. Now that is about, in my reading, avoiding unnecessary and unintended consequences where the law is not quite sharp enough, giving those additional powers, and also making sure that there are not problem gambling situations that go unchallenged or unpunished. It also provides that returns to the Crown in terms of tax deductions and so on, that depreciation charges are not offset against profits in gambling situations, so that gamblers pay the bodies using gambling pay their fair share, as I read this, and I'm sure the Chair will correct me if I've got that part wrong. And it provides that the problem gambling levy may be calculated on by a specific formula that really covers the costs that are necessary to address problem gambling. Now, Mr Chair, I commend members to the SOPs that have been put forward to give them full and worthy consideration. It is good that this bill is going through the House. I congratulate the Minister on making some progress in this regard, and I challenge members opposite to consider very closely and very carefully the other legislation that might be before the House, which would increase problem gambling and the harm to our society, and invite them to consider whether that is conscionable to do that at the same time as we hear pass legislation that restricts problem gambling. Mr Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this bill. I congratulate again Rick Barker for introducing it. I congratulate the Minister for progressing it after its first introduction in 2004. It's good to see it moving again finally, and I hope it does get through the House. Labour will certainly be supporting it because we do support the reduction of harm and the reduction of problem gambling in New Zealand.